Assalamu alaikum. It's very early morning. It's the only time I have a chance to tape. Otherwise, the grandchildren are too noisy. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. My intention is to read the edited version of Dr. Professor Ajam. He is passed away at the age of 54. And may Allah grant him the Jannah, inshallah. My name is Mogamat Faadiel Arnold, and I am intending to read the edited version of the doctoral thesis of Professor Ajam in parts. This is part one. And the particular sponsorship or the commissioning that I received was from his wife, Hadi Khairunisa Samauddin Ajam, and she dedicated this edited version of Professor Ajam's doctoral thesis to all the parents and madrasa teachers, past, present, and future, the torchbearers who keep, and will keep the flame of Islam burning, inshallah. The publisher of this particular book is Ikram Film Arts Design and Drama Studio, FADS, and it was published in 2019. And the publisher's note is the following: that the transliterations of Arabic words and names have been kept within the community's preference and not in the conformance with British standardized versions, in order to respect the convention of the Cape Muslims who founded so-called Afrikaans, in inverted commas, through their Cape Dutch dialect, Kaps, which was a unique language that the Muslims of the Cape spoke, not understood by the colonialists, but it gave rise to the beginning of Afrikaans. And this particular research was done effectively by Dr. Ahmed Davids, who was actually a friend of Professor Ajam. And so also to rectify mispronounced, anglicized, transliterated Arabic words. So that's basically the publisher's additions to the edited version, because according to the requirements of doctoral thesis, it has to be written within the dynamics of the Western cultural thesis writing, which actually has a lot of restrictions. So Professor Ajam's thesis contains facts that counter conventional beliefs and practices. And the narrative sets about, Burqa Muslims being slaves, that is not the truth, as his research actually points out. And it also points to British traps that brainwashed societies in their colonies. These features are highlighted in italics or bold to allow the reader to remember it and refer quickly into the edited text for discussions without having to use highlighters or struggle to find the salient points. So that's basically the dedication in the book and the publisher's note. We now come to the acknowledgements. The acknowledgements written by Haji Khairunisa Samsuddin Ajam, the wife of Professor Ajam. A dream has been realized, and we give shukr, thanks to Allah, the Most High, for granting us the inspiration, the perseverance, health, and strength to achieve our goal Alhamdulillah. To our parents, late husband and father, Al-Marhum, may Allah have mercy on him, Professor Muhammad Ajam, we are deeply indebted for him showing us by example how to live amicably with our fellow brethren in kindness, love, and humility. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them and all those who passed on. Inshallah. Ameen. To Dr. Mogamat Faadiel Arnold, my heartfelt thanks for taking on the mammoth task of editing my late husband's doctoral thesis. It took me like 3 years to really dig into the thesis and to find a correct way of presenting his idea and his style in the particular edited version. So, and putting in many hours to achieve this excellent outcome. Shukran Kathir to Professor Muhammad Harun, who is the son of Imam Harun, who was murdered by the secret police in the apartheid era. The son of Imam Harun. Shukran Kathir to Professor Muhammad Harun for taking time off from his very busy schedule and unselfishly sharing his expertise with those fortunate enough to acquire and read this book, and hopefully for those who watch this video and who will perhaps buy the book later, inshallah. Unfortunately, it's not on a kind of ebook presentation. Maybe later, inshallah. To acquire and read this book, words cannot express my appreciation. Jazakallah khairan. May both of you achieve what you aspire to in all your future endeavors, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, my dear niece Amina Omar and her son Said, for photocopying the original text which initiated the available edited version, alhamdulillah. And Shukran Ishara Arnold for using your graphic design skills to guide your father in creating the edited text and artwork needed to produce this book. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you always, inshallah. Amen. Yes, I struggled with learning how to actually use the program to write the book, but alhamdulillah, she taught me well. And later on, I learned some of the tricks, inshallah, alhamdulillah. Last but not least, shukran so much to our beloved family and friends for their kindness and moral support to our daughter Shamila and my daughter Shamila over the years. Shukran, my beloved nephew, my brother Muhammad Fakir Samaudin, for always being there to listen and advise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always guide and protect you, you Rashida, your wife and your family, and shower you with his richest blessings, inshallah. Ameen. Khairun Nisa Samaudin Ajam, 30th of March 2019. Okay, so the foreword was written by Professor Muhammad Harun, who at that time in 2019, he was professor in religious studies at the University of Botswana and the University of Stellenbosch. He now, which is May 2022, he has retired. His particular foreword is very interesting, and it gives you a wide kind of vision of what happened in the academic world relating to works written on the Cape Muslims. So it's an excellent reference to get our minds around who did what in what era and what time and why also. Okay, let's start. I'm now on 10 minutes. Hopefully I want to take like 15 minutes and then 15 minutes at a time for part one, etc., and part two, etc. Right. Professor Mogamat Faadiel starts like this. He says, based on our bibliographical studies at the end of 1990 and casting our sights back to the status of South African Muslim scholarship more than 50 years ago, then we can firmly argue that this type of scholarship, meaning Dr. Ajam's thesis, was non-existent. By South African Muslim scholarship, we don't simply refer to those qualified Muslim individuals who had higher degrees and who had entered the academic arena when there were a small number of universities that dotted the South African educational terrain. We in fact talk about those who had researched diverse aspects of Islamic studies and who had undertaken studies that excavate and brought to light various aspects of South Africa's growing Muslim community. The first part of his foreword is the early Muslim scholarship, that is 1950s to 1970s. Now, we hasten to make the point that though a handful of South African Muslim academics such as Professor Kasim Laki were active academically in the late 1960s at the Durban Indian College that subsequently transformed into the University of Durban Westville, that in the late 1990s amalgamated to become the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I mean, that is the time when apartheid came to a fall and it went into South Africa's democracy. So there was an amalgamation. The impact was mainly, the two scholars, the impact was mainly their specific disciplines, attempts by academics such as, their impact was mainly in their specific disciplines, attempts by academics such as Laki in the field of Islamic studies were observed, but they were too feeble to have been recognized as major inputs at that time. Importantly, however, was the fact that most books and essays that related to the field were contributed by a small number of Afrikaner scholars. Now, one must remember in this book, it actually shows the laws that prevented non-whites from attaining university degrees. They were not allowed to go beyond, Muslims were not allowed to go beyond grade 4, which is standard 2. And generally, no non-whites were allowed to go to university or complete their high school career. And therefore, it's not because they couldn't, but they were not allowed to. So that's why we have like Afrikaners, scholars who could actually touch on this particular topic in an academic world. Okay, so, and here the names of University of Pretoria's Adrianus van Selms, he died in 1984, and University of Cape Town's Isaac David Du Plessis, he died in 1981. Their names come to mind. The latter was known for his writing on the Cape Malays, in inverted commas, because the Muslims did not like to be called Cape Malays. They wanted to be Muslims. And the former became known for his studies on Arabic Afrikaans as a genre of literature. It may be reasoned that South African Muslim scholarship has been and continues to be indebted to their scholarly contributions. Now, the second part of his foreword is Muslim scholarship in the making, Ajam's outputs from 1980s to 1990s. Bearing in mind these specific facts and using this as a historical backdrop for the paragraphs that follow, we wish now to turn our focus to Professor Mogamat Taslim Ajam. His middle name was Taslim, but he hardly used it. it just used Muhammad Ajam. And probably because in those days, the whites used to control everything, school registrations and name registrations and hospitals, etc. So they would normally take the first name. So if your name is Mogamat Faadiel, they call you Muhammad. Because Professor Muhammad Ajam, his second name, which is actually his real name, his real name was Taslim. The latter was for many years, that is Professor Ajam now, a committed teacher before he joined the University of the Western Cape, where he moved up to the academic ladder in the Faculty of Education during the 1980s. During Ajam's stint as an academic at UWC, he not only made what we would like to describe as an ineffaceable input into the educational studies sector in general, but he also made a contribution to Muslim educational scholarship. In particular, thus gradually laying the foundations which Ahmad David's South African Muslim scholarship, which foundations with Ahmad David's, the South African Muslim scholarship. Now, Dr. Ahmad Davids was the one who actually wrote his thesis, etc., thesis on the origin of Afrikaans from the Muslim Imams' books that they used to write, which is the Kaap's combination of Malaysian, Indonesian, English, Dutch, even some Xhosa words into the dialect of the Muslims, what we would call the Kaaps. Arabic, etc., was all included in one sentence. I used to call our language the computer language before computers came out, because we would speak like to one sentence with about 5 to 6, 7 languages in it, and it will take another person in a standard language to take 10 sentences to say what we want to say in one sentence. So I used to call it the computer language. So there is little question. The latter we contend was certainly amongst those individuals who played a pivotal role in the formation of the African Muslim scholarly circles, for whom all of us are indebted. That is now Dr. Ahmad Davids started these, also very powerful original research. Okay, I'll have to stop at this point now, because the internet connection is a little unstable. So let's see what happens so far.